Hey everyone, it's LOZA here and welcome to the Fixing the Dark Magicians Part 1, a look at the history. Shoutouts to George H for all the visuals you'll see in this video, and a massive shout out always to Cyber Mini for the music you see in a lot of my content. Let's dive in. Welcome to the world dedicated to the Dark Magicians. Whether you're a collector, a fan, or a duelist looking for tips, you'll find in-depth content exploring the Dark Magician's legacy. Welcome Dark Magician fans. Let's take a look at 2002 to 2010. We saw cards like the Skilled Dark Magician, which required 3 spell counters, to tag into the Dark Magician. Dark Magic Curtain, which could summon Dark Magician from the deck at the cost of half your life points, and you couldn't summon any other monsters that turn, similar to Red Eye's Fusion. Magical Dimension was another way you could summon Dark Magician along with Ancient Rules. High Summoner's Art could search Dark Magician. Other strategies were getting Dark Magician go on the field, Sage's Stone, summoning Dark Magician, using Dedication through Light of Darkness to summon Dark Magician of Chaos, which was unfortunately banned for how generically good it was at adding back one-of spells like Pot of Greed, Snatch Steal, the list goes on, right? Graceful Charity, all those crazy spells back in the day. So during this period, Dark Magician cards didn't really have a specific strategy. Instead, they're often tied to situational plays that reflected key moments from the manga and the anime, rather than fitting into a streamlined or cohesive strategy. Let's jump to 2011 to 2013. During the Synchro era, Dark Magician was pretty much completely forgotten. Blue Eyes did get some stuff, however. In the XYZ era, only a few cards provided support, including the notable Magi Magician Go, which unfortunately never made it to the TCG. So we did have things like Eborn Illusion Magician here, which could help you establish more Dark Magicians essentially by summoning one from the deck and giving you an effect when you attacked with the vanilla. You could banish a card, which tied nice with Circle having 2 banishes a turn. I've got to admit, Circle didn't exist yet, but looking forward, that's going to be cool. Daigusto Emerald was also a strategy employed to summon Dark Magician from the grave. It involved you using Summon a Monk to bring out Prisma from deck, Prisma's effect becoming Dark Magician in name by sending him to the bin by revealing a Dark Magician fusion, and then overlaying into Emerald to special a vanilla from your grave by detaching material. That being Dark Magician, but why? Why were we summoning him? I don't know, just stats. Moving to 2014, this year we received the best support possible. Dark Magician finally became an official archetype for the first time. This was a huge moment. Now all the effort it took to summon a single Dark Magician or Dark Magician Go was worth it, because you could easily summon powerful fusion monsters using just one material thanks to the Eye of Timaeus. Cue the Eye of Timaeus coming into play. Unfortunately, this card wasn't ever searchable later on in the later Dark Magician support, and this could be because it was introduced very early to let you go into Dark Paladin, Amulet Dragon, Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight, and Dark Flare Knight very early on in the game when Dark Magician didn't really have a game plan. So this was a way to fuse without really needing polymerization or anything else. It was pretty good for the time, but I don't think this would have made the deck anywhere close to meta relevant. 2014 was Cosmo peak format, I believe. Cosmo was primarily meta in 2015 and 2016. Okay, so we were pretty close to that. These cards were not scratching up to something like that. We're now going to jump to 2016 to 2018, and oh boy, Dark Magician finally received tons of support across various products, focusing on summoning powerful monsters that take on the Dark Magician name while on the field. The deck evolved into a control strategy capable of banishing up to 2 cards per turn and wiping out the opponent's back row of spells and traps. Some of the cards we'll talk about are Magician's Rod, being able to search any spell trap in the Dark Magician archetype except for Eye of Timaeus. You are able to go and get Circle, Eternal Soul, Magician's Navigation, Dark Magic Inheritance. All these cards were pretty alright for the time. The deck mainly just wanted to set up Circle, Eternal Soul, and Dark Magician, which was the Dark Magician Triangle, as you can see here. Unfortunately, Eternal Soul has the downside of blowing up your field. A bit later on, we also got the promo card Apprentice Illusion Magician, which helped in getting Dark Magician and also just having an extra body, or her effect to give your spellcasters 2k during the damage step was also nice. There was some XYZs you could play, Eborn Illusion, Big Eye, Flare Metal. I don't think Felgrand was out for a long time, but that's okay. There was also Draco Sack. Keeper of Dragon Magic came out around this time, but unfortunately, it just wasn't very good. I think Magician's Rod was the better normal summon. Alright, we're going to 2019 to 2022. This is pretty much where we're at for modern day Dark Magician, because we haven't got any more support. So Dark Magician received a new wave of support that focused on fusion summoning. However, this required adding bricks to the deck to make it work. Additionally, they gained access to the versatile strategy that allows summoning one of the best fusion monsters in the game. But now, anyone can play it too. So this is of course referring to Anaconda and Red Eye's fusion summoning Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, which was absolutely crazy in Dark Magician. Now of course other decks are able to do this too, so I really do hope going forward we get a Dark Magician Link 2 that lets us do pretty much the same thing but just for us. I think being locked into Dark Magician monsters, maybe Dark Spellcasters that specifically list Dark Magician, is a great way to go. We also got the card Soul Servant, Illusion of Chaos, the Timaeus monster, which is not very good in my opinion, but Secrets has definitely grown on me. Secrets I think is the better fusion card here. Still a one-off, not really the fusion spell you want to see. We do need a Red Eyes fusion style fusion card in future, so hopefully that will be on our 2025 radar. Magician Souls of course was a sensational piece of support, probably one of the better ones here. Along with Soul Servant, you're able to pretty much do any combo in the deck you like, as Magician Souls will mill Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl or any of the Palladiums, and then you're able to Soul Servant, go stack Rod, stack Illusion of Chaos, stack Timaeus, stack literally anything in the deck, and banish Soul Servant and draw one. So you're able to draw what you stack, which is really huge. Now unfortunately, of course, Anaconda's been banned now. A lot of Dark Magician players were happy because, I don't know, that's how they are, right? They're giga set on playing the deck pure, and Anaconda wasn't pure, and playing Red Eyes wasn't pure, and that's a strange hill to die on in my opinion, because I just want to play what makes the deck the best, and I can say Anaconda definitely made Dark Magician playable at the very, very least. So yeah, I miss Anaconda, but I do hope we get our own version of it, similar to like the Fiendsmith Link 2, or just, you know, other decks who have a good Link 1, Link 2. Something that lets us fusion summon would be really nice. You'll notice here on Circle it also says you'll never add any DM card, and the reason for that is it only adds Dark Magician spells and traps, and the more you played the deck, the less Dark Magician spells and traps you played because of how bricky they were. A lot of them don't start your combos. Like, Illusion of Chaos is your rotor for the deck. If Illusion of Chaos was a spell, Circle would be a lot better, I think. But yeah, it's a bit of an issue that Circle can only really add cards that don't do anything on their own, so yeah, a lot of lists put Circle down to 1, Eternal Soul down to 1, Soul Servant was normally a 2 to 3, Secrets was a 1. It's just the way it is until we get better spells in Dark Magician. For example, a fusion spell, as we mentioned earlier, would be pretty much exactly what we need. Something to get the deck going, a engine starter that's a spell, which is kind of baffling in a spellcaster deck that we don't have. Now we're looking at the 2022 to 2024 timeline. We could only enjoy these versions with great synergy for about 3 months before the deck's performance declined after the ban list hit. After that, players attempted to update the deck by mixing with other archetypes and engines, but it still struggles to keep up with the current meta. So, this is referring to Predator and Anaconda's ban. We got given a bunch of good support and consistency. We lost one of our best Link monsters. Banned on May 17th, 2022, Verte Anaconda would never see play again in Dark Magician outside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Now, the whole combo of Rod and Souls doesn't have an endgame plan, and while you can replace it with things like IP, Masquerena, SP Little Knight, or anything else you can think of, it just nothing measured up to the feeling of linking into Verte Anaconda and summoning Dragoon while milling Dark Magician to the graveyard. If you could only ban one of these cards, which one would you choose? Dragoon or Verte? Now I'm going to point out that in Master Duel currently, as of right now, both are legal and no one cares. In the OCG, Dragoon is legal but Anaconda remains banned, and that is the same in the TCG. I think it's time for Anaconda to 1, come back. If it can be back on Master Duel and no one cares, I think it can be back in general. But, in saying that, I would much prefer we get our own Dark Magician version of Anaconda. So let's look at some of the problems that Anaconda gave us. We were forced to include bricks to play the game. Red Eye's Dark Dragoon was amazing, but playing Red Eyes was not great. It did give you a second pop on your Dragoon, but I don't think it was worth it overall. Verte Anaconda's ban made it much harder to summon Dark Dragoon, and, you know, it is one of the most powerful monsters in a Dark Magician deck. Now you had to hard draw Red Eye's fusion and rely on things like Red Eye's Insight and other inconsistent methods to summon Dragoon, which slowed down the deck's power and locked you out of summoning by other methods. After summoned using the effects of Magician's Souls and Rod, this monsters on the field were kind of useless in the archetype. We did find a combo with Timaeus that allowed you to get to Dragoon, but that meant your Rod wasn't searching Circle, it wasn't searching Soul Servant, it wasn't searching Eternal Soul, which was pivotal to the Anaconda play. The reason Anaconda was so good was because your Magician's Rod could focus on getting the Dark Magician Triangle online. It could go and get Circle, it could go and get Soul Servant, it could go and get whatever you needed, Salvation, while you knew you could go Magician Souls, send your excess pieces for draws, for example sending the Salvation that set the Eternal Soul for draws, and then going into your Anaconda, getting your Dark Magician in the grave and your Dragoon. So it meant not only could your Magician's Rod focus on getting part of the Dark Magician Triangle, it meant your Magician's Souls could focus on sending a second brick to the grave. By second brick, of course, I mean Dark Magician Girl, Mana Mahad, instead of Dark Magician, because your Anaconda will send you Dark Magician, unless it gets hand trapped, which is a whole nother story. Drawing into the fusion pieces needed for Red Eye's Dark Dragoon and Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight can be clunky, leading to dead hands and a lot of slow starts. And while the Dark Magician deck has some strong opening plays, its recovery after being disrupted is weak compared to other meta decks. Cards like Dark Magical Circle and Eternal Soul are crucial for the deck's grind game, however these cards are easily countered by back row removal, like Cosmic Cycle and Twin Twisters evenly matched. The list goes on. Thanks for tuning in, guys. That is the end of part 1. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is going to be part 2. Fixing Dark Magicians. Part 2, a failed archetype. If you haven't watched part 1, make sure you go and check it out, but I feel like this part's going to be even better. Once again, shoutouts to George H for putting these digital prints together, and also Sabri Iamini for the music. You guys are the best. Welcome to the world dedicated to Dark Magicians. Whether you're a collector, a fan, or a duelist just looking for tips, you'll find in-depth content exploring Dark Magician's legacy right here today. Are you sure this is a DM card? Well, it has the hat. This is one of the oldest archetypes in the game, having received support for nearly 25 years. However, these cards were rarely designed with a unifying strategy in mind, making it difficult to play a coherent deck. The latest Searcher, Illusion of Chaos, doesn't have access to many of the older useful cards. Cards such as Sorcerer of Dark Magic, Magician of Black Chaos Max, Dark Magician of Chaos, Magician's Valkyrie, Kiwi Magician Girl. These cards do not fit under the Dark Magician umbrella, even though they wear a similar hat, are clearly in the art style of Dark Magician related cards, and ultimately, we know they're Dark Magician cards one way or another. Another issue is that the inconsistency between the OCG and the TCG names, which complicates building effective strategies. For example, the Spellcaster Fusion version of Dark Magician, originally called Super Magical in the OCG, has a different name in the TCG. So for example, Eye of Timaeus kind of synergizes with the Super Magical cards. Skilled Dark Magician also not counting as a Dark Magician card is very interesting. Dark Magic Curtain and Dark Magic Veil are both Dark Magic spells, while only one of them is searchable in Dark Magician. Dark Magic Curtain is searchable, but we would never play it. Dark Magic Veil, I think we would actually play at 1 if it was searchable. Maybe. Pretty much a Monster Rebornian archetype, but if it was searchable, that makes it a lot better, right? And of course, Eye of Timaeus still has the big issue of being unsearchable, even today. So, in theory, like Rod and Souls, if Rod could get Eye of Timaeus, we could have 2-card any boss monster we like, but that's just not the case, sadly. Speaking of Eye of Timaeus, die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. Introducing Dark Magician as a name-based archetype was exciting, but in practice it didn't fully work. Many related cards don't share the name, limiting synergy, something that Blue Eyes did successfully from the very beginning. The best part of Eye of Timaeus is that it allows you to fusion summon using Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl without needing polymerization, with just one material. This offers quick access to powerful fusions, greatly boosting the versatility of the Dark Magician deck, which was clearly meant to be fusion based. Here you can see the list of fusions you can make with just Eye of Timaeus, a Dark Magician on the field, or a Dark Magician Girl on the field. The Eye of Timaeus, an unviable and improbable errata. Many players wish the Eye of Timaeus had an errata to work with Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. However, in today's meta, this wouldn't be effective, specifically for Magician's Rod. The abundance of hand traps in the current decks would easily disrupt this play, and it would also force players to include extra cards to add protection just for this combo. Modern strategies demand flexibility and the ability to continue after interruptions, which this errata would not offer. Plus, it's unlikely they'll issue an errata after so many years of multiple high rarity reprints. And I think the nail in the coffin here is the Monster Timaeus that they added to the game. This card not only is a searchable Eye of Timaeus, in brackets, it's also a monster version, and it's way, way, way worse. This card is about 45 times worse than Eye of Timaeus. The only benefit this has over Eye of Timaeus is being searchable. That's it. If this card wasn't searchable, it would be literal garbage. And quite frankly, I still believe it is. It's bricky, it's searchable, yet needs a discard or a send to the grave to summon. And even after that, it's not even a quick effect to fuse, which imagine if it was a quick effect. You could go to battle phase, because it is a big attack monster, right? If you could go to battle phase with this, hit your opponent with your Dark Magician and your Timaeus and then fuse, that would be great for going second. Could have opened up a lot of game plans. If you read the card Blazing Cartesia, I think Timaeus should have been pretty much copy-paste of this. I don't care if its stats were lower. Let's be real. There's people who defend this card by saying, well, it's got 2800 attack. Who cares, guys? This is not 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh! Stats don't really matter on a card that's made to be fusion material, right? Fusion material card can be literally 0/0. Like, we don't care. We're going to fuse with it to make Dragoon. So the stats on this are irrelevant. If this card worked more like Cartesia, we would be very, very happy. But that's a rant for another day. Magician Souls, the best card for everyone except Dark Magician. Now this was a big problem, a massive problem. Magician Souls nearly got itself on the ban list because of Spiral cards abusing it. Magician Souls is a fantastic card for decks that gain advantage by sending key cards from the hand and field to the graveyard, making it a staple in combo heavy strategies where draw power is crucial. Now these kind of decks were decks that had really good spells and traps with good effects in the graveyard such as Spiral. Basically, if you had a deck where you had beneficial spell and trap effects in the grave, Magician Souls was the card for you. It was an extender that could give you draw power as well as putting those spells and traps into the graveyard for you. However, in Dark Magician, Magician Souls doesn't shine as much. While it helps you to draw, a little bit, Dark Magician decks don't benefit from the consistency of sending the spells and traps to the grave. We've only got a couple of spells and traps with grave effects, and a lot of them aren't very good, or their Soul Servant, which you kind of want to activate instead of sending to grave straight away. Instead, we want to focus on maintaining board control and recycling key resources, and as a result, Magician Souls can sometimes feel like it disrupts the deck's flow rather than enhance it. Of course, Magician Souls helps you put Dark Magician or any of the other bricks in the grave. That part of the card is great. However, it just doesn't quite hit the same in this deck as it does in a deck like Spiral, which is really sad. This triangle is so broken, but not the good broken. This is, of course, referring to the Dark Magician triangle established by me, LOZA. This is the theory that to play Dark Magician well, you need to have established Circle, Eternal Soul, and a Dark Magician, or preferably a Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, to just continuously recycle, achieving one banished every turn, and just slowing down the game for your opponent, more or less. This is the standard game plan most Dark Magician decks aim to go for. But what's the problem? Well, from 2016 to 2018, we could use Eternal Soul and Dark Magical Circle to banish a card each turn, and 2 during attacks thanks to Eborn Illusion Magician. Then thanks to Dark Magician the Dragon Knight protecting us, we didn't have to worry about Eternal Soul's downside. But now that playstyle's no longer viable. You spend way too many resources going for one fusion and one banish, instead of an untouchable Dragoon. This makes Eternal Soul and Circle feel less useful since Dark Magician and Dark Magician Go work better in the graveyard for drawing with Soul Servant. And it just means going for any other fusion just feels bad when you can just make Dragoon. So this is a bit of a Dragoon issue as well. Dragoon being so strong means the other cards in the deck feel so bad. So as you can see from the graphic, the way you would make Dragoon and the way you'd make Dragon Knight is more or less the same. You need Dark Magician and you need a Dragon. Then you need a card to get there, such as Secrets or Timaeus. Timaeus being both in this case. Now option 1 is Dragoon, which is a untargetable, doesn't die from card effects. It's a beat stick, 3000 attack. It can negate something and then go up 1000 attack permanently. It can pop 1 card and burn your opponent for it. If you used Red Eyes or another vanilla, you can pop 2. That's option number 1, right? Seems pretty good. Option number 2 is a card that protects your back row and identifies as Dark Magician on the field. It's pretty black and white. You would pretty much go for Dragoon 99% of the time, unless you had Circle Eternal Soul established, then you might be like, oh, I might go for Dragon Knight. Even then, that requires you having like a perfect hand, right? So it just wasn't viable to go for Dragon Knight anymore, or any other Dark Magician fusion for that matter. Dragoon is just the king. The DM x DMG dilemma. The internal contradictions and external dependencies. The Dark Magician archetype often contradicts itself, requiring cards outside its own theme or having effects that work against one another. Players are forced to use both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl without clear synergy, which stretches resources. Many strategies demand having both on the field, ultimately weakening the deck's potential. These inefficiencies lead Dark Magician players to rely on non-archetype cards for consistency. To improve the archetype, Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl need better synergy and support that allows them to work together effectively with a clear emphasis on the true potential residing within the extra deck. What this is referring to is cards like the Dark Magicians not being able to be summoned like a contact fusion style, that card not identifying as Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl on the field or grave. Like, these are just some silly things that would really help the archetype a lot. Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in the hand are bricks. If there was a way to make them less bricky, that would be huge. I've suggested like a link one that lets you use the bricks from the hand. Some people think that's a bit too broken, but that's honestly what we need. There's a lot of different Dark Magician archetypes that require you to play other stuff. If you'd like to play Dragoon, you need to play Red Eyes. If you want to play Cavalry or Paladin, you gotta play Buster Blader. From the start, Dark Magicians wanted you to mix in these other bricky archetypes, and it's just kind of wild. Cards like Magician's Combination, it's a negate for the deck, but it needs you to alternate between Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl on the field grave. It is the most awkward negate you could possibly get. I hope we can get a counter trap in future that is just way more just linear than this. This is just the most convoluted way to negate one of your opponent's cards. If they simply just call by the grave your Dark Magician, like, you just lose the game anyway. Or, you know, Bestials, which are everywhere most days. So yeah, there's just a lot of impracticalities in this deck, and it's very frustrating that we can't use Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl together in a good way. Like, they just don't do anything. They're just vanillas, and when you try to make them work together, the best thing you can come up with is like the Bonds package to create a board wipe, but then you need to leave the vanillas on the field. Regardless, no matter how you try to use them, they just are better off becoming a Dragoon. So things to fix. We need to play both Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl to get access to the good stuff, right? We're talking about the double draw from Soul Servant. We're talking about stuff like the supposed negate from Magician's Combination. Like, clearly they want us to play Dark Magician Girl, Dark Magician, and even probably the Palladium cards, right? Konami, in theory, want us to play all of these bricks, but, like, we need something to do with them then. Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl become bricks that need to be sent to the grave, or they lose their impact. And the less time they spend on the field, the better. Magician's Rod is the primary searcher, but it's too vulnerable to hand traps. I suggest something like a Link 1 to fix that. Just to have just copy Rod's effect again, I don't care. That would be fine. So after using the effect of Magician's Souls and Magician's Rod, there's no real follow-up plays as well. So if you do get hand trapped, you're just like, well, we need like a link to go into from here, right? There's nothing else to do. So that would help a lot. And decks like Trap Trick have links. Like, why does that trap deck have links to extend their plays after they normal summon? Like, that is wild to me. So I definitely think we should get links. And Blue Eyes has a link 1 now as well. So it's definitely on our radar, right? We don't have a way to play through disruptions, which often ends the turn. That's why players heavily rely on other engines. Guys, we never want to. Dark Magician players will all tell you the same thing. I'm playing XYZ engine to, you know, compete with the meta. And Dark Magician purists get angry at us for doing that. And, like, ultimately, we're doing it because we want to win, right? We're not doing it because we hate Dark Magician. We're doing it because we want to win, and Dark Magician doesn't play through interruptions very well. It can bait interruptions, and then you do other deck stuff, which is great. But unfortunately, we just need a way for our deck to play through interruptions. And that's just going to have to be links, I think. I think that's the best way to do it. Now, our fusion monsters are decent. This is a positive thing, right? Fusion monsters are good, but they don't gain enough advantage from the available support, and they require too many resources to summon. And the only one you ever want to make is Dragoon. We do have a lot of good fusion monsters, but you normally have to use 3 cards to summon them, and by then, they're not worth 3 cards. If there was a more efficient way to summon some of the older fusions, and yes, I'm not talking about Dragoon, I'm talking about the Dark Magician, I'm talking about Master of Chaos, even Dark Paladin. If there was a 1-card way, locked in our archetype, to summon them for 1 card, for example, I have Tomice, but searchable, that could be a viable strategy. Because a lot of these cards feel like they should have been contact fuses, for example, the Dark Magicians. The fact that you need to fuse into that is almost a hate crime to me, and the fact that it doesn't identify as Dark Magician or Dark Magician go on the field or grave is really, really dumb. So I would suggest a fusion spell that lets you fusion summon using material from hand, deck, grave, or maybe just hand deck, and I would say the fusion summon card adopts the name the Dark Magician, just like the Red Eyes fusion gives the monster summon the Red Eyes Black Dragon name. I would love to see that. This deck lacks a way to negate or control the field compared to the older support. I honestly don't know what this one's referring to, sorry. But I think it's just saying that it can't control the field anymore, and that's just because the meta is so fast now. So we kind of need cards to bring us up to speed, more or less. It's unlikely that Tomice will receive an errata, so it's time to explore new strategies and move forward. I absolutely agree. It has to happen, guys. Timaeus is not getting errated. We need new cards, new support. We could get a new fusion spell that is a new Timaeus based card. I would be fine with that. But based on the printing of the monster Timaeus, I don't think the Eye of Timaeus will ever get an errata, and I think people need to let go of that and let go of the card so we can move forward. The deck struggles with consistency, especially when trying to resolve key plays. There's also cards with contradictory effects. I got to agree that there's a lot of contradicting effects in Dark Magician. It feels like a lot of our support was made by like 8 to 4 different people, 8 to 14 different people rather, and it's very frustrating. Like, the guy who made Dragoon is not the guy who made Dark Magic Inheritance, right? Like, they gotta be 2 different gamers, because that shit is completely different. If they could find ways to make some of the older cards useful as well, that would be really cool. I do think cards like Dark Magic Inheritance did have potential back in the day, which I'll talk about in another video. But yeah, nowadays the support we got just doesn't synergize with that at all, because Soul Servant banishes itself. So, not to say Soul Servant's a bad card, it just doesn't tie in well with some of the older support. And that's going to be the end of part 2. Hello and welcome, it's LOZA. We're on to part 3 now of the Fixing the Dark Magician series. This part is this the salvation? And as always, thank you to George H for putting this together, and thank you to Sabri Mini for the music. Welcome guys to the world of dedicated Dark Magician fans. Whether you're a collector, a duelist, or a fan like myself, you'll find in-depth content exploring Dark Magician's legacy. In today's episode, we will be trying to fix the deck. We're trying to, number 1, bring DM and DMG back as the central pieces, focusing on their field presence rather than just their use as a spent resource in the grave. We're also, point 2, trying to support the archetype's modern fusion summoning goals and bringing back the triangle, the Dark Magician triangle we've referred to in the past. For those who don't know, Circle Eternal Soul Dark Magician, it's essentially just that. Point number 3, we'd like to enhance synergy with the older and more overlooked cards. This means cards like maybe Dark Magic Combination, maybe Dark Magic Inheritance, maybe even bond between teacher and student. We would also like to, as point number 4, emphasize balanced, archetype-specific support to avoid unintended crossovers, e.g. the Magician Souls and Spiral scenario, e.g. the Anaconda scenario. Well, that wasn't our card, but you get what I mean. Illusion of Chaos and Magician Souls have been splashed in a couple of decks who really benefit from spells and traps in the grave of their archetype. So if we could avoid generically good cards, that would be huge. Every deck playing Dragoon obviously wasn't great. We want Dragoon just to be ours, and we want that for our future support as well, just for us to win with. No one else, thanks. And our final point will be, we'd like to introduce new ways to play around hand traps and other disruptions. And my suggestion to this is link monsters once again. This would help improve pretty much a lot of the points here. It would help with balance, it would help with synergy, it would help with consistency, and it would help play around hand traps. Let's get into the support. And just a disclaimer, we know this won't completely fix the archetype, but it would give it a fresh coat of paint and allow us to enjoy playing in the modern meta. The first card we're going to look at is Chaos Magical Circle, a retrain of Dark Magical Circle. It is a continuous spell, and it says, once per turn, when this card is activated, add 1 card that mentions Dark Magician from your deck to your hand. So straight away this is better than Circle, because this is more like the Shining Sarcophagus continuous spell. You get to search a card straight away. And in fact, I think this could even change to be like the Shining Sarc one, where during the main phase you can just go and search once per turn. That'd be pretty good. But we're not done, so let's keep going. Up to twice per turn, if 1 or more Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl, or fusion monsters that list either as material are summoned, except during the damage step, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and banish it. So up to twice per turn now, you can get a banish. You can go Eternal Soul, summon Dark Magician, banish 1. Then you can go Secrets, fusion or something, banish again. That's pretty nice. Double banish. Very cool. But we're not done. So you can only use this effect per summon, once per summon. That makes sense, right? Next, if this card leaves the field, special a spellcaster monster from your grave or that is banished. That is sensational because it's tying into the Chaos name of this card. Chaos often refers to the banish area. It just seems to be in Yu-Gi-Oh! Grave or banish area. And light and dark monsters, which we know this deck is. And it also lets you summon something from grave or banished, which is nice for the mid to late game. We've all had that experience of getting dusted on your Eternal Soul and Circle and crying. So this being able to summon something from grave or banished is really huge, especially if you've played against someone who's got DD Crow, Called by the Grave or a Bestial and has banished your Dark Magician. You're then able to summon it back, or Circle getting popped. Which, another reason, if this card leaves the field, that means Magician Souls could send this to the grave. right? You can get rid of this circle yourself to trigger that effect. That's important. This card alone would make dark types so much better. Just this. But let's move on. But this is a sensational start. Companion Souls, a remake of Eternal Soul. Now this card is always treated as Eternal Soul. I just wanted to point out this card's not always treated as Circle, which I think could be another addition. But anyway, Companion Souls. The first time each Dark Magician Girl, or any fusion monster which lists one or both of these as material you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect each turn, it is not destroyed. That's a good start. Once per turn, you can activate one of the following effects. Special summon one Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from the hand or grave. This already is allowing you to use Dark Magician Girl with Eternal Soul, which from the start should have always been allowed. So that's pretty good off the bat. One thing I've noticed is it only gives you protection from battle or card effect once per turn, which we all know the Eternal Soul gives you complete immunity. Your Dark Magician ignores cards. I think that's a lot better. But, yeah. Well, maybe there's more to this card, and maybe because this card's more updated, it's, you know, weaker in some aspects. Second effect. Set one spell trap from your deck that mentions Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl in its text, with a different name from the cards you control. This is awesome because it allows you to go and set Magician's Combination. You could potentially set Eternal Soul. Oh, I suppose you can't because this card's always treated as Eternal Soul. With different names to the cards you control. So you could have Chaos Circle, you could have Regular Circle, and I guess if you're setting a spell trap that's a continuous spell, you can flip it up right away. There's a lot of synergy with this card and just the deck in general. Because, yeah, we could go and get ourselves a bunch of different cards. I really like that. This does feel like a modern day equivalent of Eternal Soul. We've got our first Link monster. This is a Link 2 Dark Magic Vault. The material for this card is 2 level 4 or lower Dark Spellcaster monsters, and I just want to say off the bat, it should probably be 2 level 3 or lower Dark Spellcaster monsters, just to make sure it stays in this deck, because Rod is a level 3 and Souls is a level 1. Or you could just say Dark Spellcaster monsters that list Dark Magician. And I think we have to make it 2 because people could splash in Magician Souls, right? If we just made it 1. So I think it does have to be 2 Dark Spellcaster monsters that list Dark Magician. I don't know, maybe that's too specific, but I'm just really... I don't want another Dragoon situation, right? I don't want another Anaconda Dragoon situation. I don't want another just Soul situation, right? I just want our cards to be our cards. Anyway, let's keep going. So you can only use the effect of Dark Magic Vault once per turn. Discard one card. Choose one of these effects, and after resolving for the rest of your turn, you can only fusion summon monsters from the extra. Okay, so a Link 2, that locks us into fusion summoning. That's fine. I'm guessing this is just Anaconda. So, you can special summon a Dark Magician from the grave, then you can add one level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster monster, or Timaeus the United Dragon from your deck to your hand. Okay, so 2 monsters go into this, and you're able to get 2 cards. That's pretty awesome. You do have to discard one, but still, that's really awesome. The other effect, special summon a Dark Magician Girl from grave. During this turn, you can activate the effects of spells and traps that mention Dark Magician the turn they are set. Oh, well that's a different effect. Okay, so the first effect is very much like Anaconda, right? It's getting you get to special out a Dark Magician from a grave. Then you get to add a Spellcaster or a Timaeus from deck to hand to basically, you know, fusion summon. Very nice. Or the second effect, getting you a Dark Magician Girl from grave, or specialing a Dark Magician Girl from grave, and then you can flip your spells and traps this turn, which means you could flip up like your Eternal Soul or the new Eternal Soul card and extend from there. Though you are locked into fusions for the rest of the turn, so there wouldn't be any Link extending, you'd just be extending into more fusion plays potentially. But I mean, that is what we're aiming to do, right? This is a really interesting card. I like that it's got 2 effects. That's always nice to have options. Even if one option's way better than the other, it's still good to have the option of the second effect. I like it. It's a nice replacement for Anaconda. And of course, it's only got 500 attack, and it's a Dark Spellcaster. Like, we don't care about that too much, but yeah, that's good stats. We don't mind. Alright, so what we've got in terms of upgrades is Eternal Soul becoming Companion Souls. So normal Eternal Soul, you have your Dark Magicians unaffected, you get to reborn a Dark Magician every turn, and you get to add either Thousand Knives or Dark Magic Attack to hand, which you're never going to really add. Maybe Dark Magic Attack, maybe. Companion Souls instead gives you 1 protection per turn on a powerful monster. So this can protect your Dragoon, this can protect your Dragon Knight, like it can protect way more than just Dark Magician and, you know, cards that name themselves Dark Magician. This also reborns a DM or a DMG, so that's nice, having the flexibility. And it lets you set any DM card from deck or grave. That's a big one. That is a really big one. Now, you can only pick one of those effects per turn, whether you choose to summon or you choose to set. So you have to pick wisely, right? But I do like this card. This card is good. I'm a bit sad we didn't have a way to activate it face up, but I guess the Link 2 can kind of do that, so that's cool. Then if we look at Circle, the Circle has a chance to add a card, but normally it just doesn't happen, and it's a 1 banish per turn. The new Chaos Circle is a massive upgrade in which you add 1 card, you have 2 banishes per turn, and you can special summon a spellcaster from grave when this leaves the field, which gives it synergy with souls or just getting popped by your opponent's cards. You also notice this Eternal Soul doesn't, or Companion Souls doesn't wipe your field when it goes to the graveyard. That's always nice. The triangle could be improved by extending its protection to Dark Magician Girl and related fusion monsters, while recycling Dark Magician cards to reduce duplicates to make room for more useful options. I think that is a good way to go about retrains of the classic Dark Magician triangle. And of course, our new Link 2 allows us to float into a lot of different cards here. Something unique about Dark Magic Vault is because it adds 1 high-level spellcaster, it can actually go and grab you stuff like Sorcerer of Dark Magic, Magician of Chaos, Magician of Black Chaos Max, Dark Magician of Chaos, Dark Eradicator, Warlock. Like, you can go and get all those clear Dark Magician monsters that aren't tied into the archetype, which I think is really cool. And it also future-proofs for any future high-level spellcasters that are really good. We could slot them into the deck. So finally, we have a solution to this Monsters on Field issues. So Dark Magic Vault's second effect can allow you to go and get a Dark Magician Girl on the field, and it lets you get one of the Dark Magician back row cards that you can flip up that turn. So being able to flip up Navigation turn 1, Companion Souls turn 1, Eternal Soul turn 1, Combination turn 1, there's a lot of good options here. I think this card gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think that's ultimately what we want out of a Dark Magician Link 2. The ability to go for fusion summons, or for some high-level spellcasters, or the ability to flip our traps up turn 1, which, as a spellcaster deck, we probably should be able to do stuff like that. Illusion of Chaos and Preparation of Rites give us a 23% chance of drawing both Rod and Souls on turn 1, opening up new strategic options when used together. Magician's Salvation can now finally shine as a powerful card. These are the same cards that we got in 2022. If we do play Preparation of Rites, we can go and get Illusion of Chaos, but on top of that, we can go get Soravis, which acts as a pseudo Call by the Grave, being able to protect your monsters from Imperm and Veiler and stuff like that. So, as mentioned in this graphic, cards like Salvation and Soul Servant are now super important because we've got our Link 2 that just helps facilitate getting Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl on the field or the grave really early. So you'll actually be able to play Salvation and Soul Servant at decent numbers and feel good about it, you know, not feel like you're going to brick. And if we did have this Link 2 strategy to go for, right, we would be maxing out on Rod and Souls copies because we know we want to get there ASAP. So now, with the new support that we've just hypothesized, there is so many new ways to get into Dragon Knight or Dragoon, which are your primary fusion targets. With the new Companion Souls, you'll be able to protect it with your Dragon Knight, which is huge. Or you can just have it with Dragoon and give Dragoon an extra layer of protection, which is really good if you get hit with something like Forbidden Droplet or Dark Ruler no more. You just got that additional backup protection. As mentioned in the graphic here, we have so many new ways to get to our fusion cards thanks to this Link 2. The big problem here now would be Droll and stuff like Ash hitting the crucial searches. And this is a big part of where we're kind of on a meta contending list now, because we would just be playing Called by the Grave and Crossout at that point, along with Droll in our own deck and Ash in our own deck, to try to, you know, make sure that doesn't happen to us. So if we could get the deck to a point where we have to worry about getting hand trapped on important searches, that would be great. I think the biggest problem the deck has is we don't have any searches that are like, you know, the Ash bait, because all of the searches are kind of bad right now. So if we did have this Link 2, this crazy good effect where your opponent saved your hand traps for it, we could then work on strategies to prevent them from hand trapping it, right? It's a problem for us to deal with when we get there, right? We'll build the bridge when we get there kind of scenario. So if we could get a support like this, that would be huge. Alright, and the final bit. Is DM fixed? Well, not really. This support that's been proposed by George is just to boost the deck speed and, you know, unify it with solid strategies, helping it control the board while reducing the need for multiple bricks in the main. And, you know, these plays could make the deck more resilient to hand traps. I really do believe that. Previously, just one hand trap ends our turn, and well, that's not quite fun for any Dark Magician players, let's be real. The additional recycling could help the deck survive as well, and cards like Bestial that banish Dark Magician cripple the deck instantly. So this new support does help deal with a lot of those problems. I like this little snippet at the top. Did you notice that Magician Souls effect isn't being used? What would you use it for? Well, you see, Toybox is a really good engine to use Magician Souls with, and Yugi even used the Toybox engine in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, which is really cool. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like it, and honestly, if we could just get Dark Magician spells and traps that did a better job, I think we'd all be much happier. As much as I love the Toybox engine, it'd be awesome if we could just use our own spells and traps to the same level that Toybox was. So I do think the new Circle has great synergy with Souls, but yeah, if we could get an in-arc type spell that was as good as Toybox, how crazy would that be? But ultimately, let's get to the end of this line where it says, would you use this new support? Let me know down in the comments, let me and George know, would you use the new support proposed by George? I think it's pretty good. I think it puts us in a good stance. You know, we'd be able to fight the meta and just kind of have more of a strategy, actually have a game plan. Go for this Link 2, try to set up a fusion, or try to set up a bunch of back row that we can flip turn 1. Like, there's a lot of good options there. There's probably some degenerate strategies as well if we can flip up our back row turn 1, right? I can only think of all the stuff Labyrinth does with its traps, like, whew, we could probably do some really cool stuff. That is, unfortunately, the end of the Fixing the Dark Magician series, but thank you so much for joining me, and once again, shout outs to the creator of this series and the music. So George and Sabri, thank you very much. If you guys enjoyed this series, don't forget to like, comment down below. Perhaps we'll make another one soon on how we would fix something else in Dark Magician. But thank you so much for joining me, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm your boy LOZA, and we've got that Dark Magician content coming at you forever. So yeah, stick around if you like Dark Magician. You know we've got some support coming. We got a Dark Magician structure deck coming, guys. Don't you worry. Alright, that's enough copium for now, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.